No quarterback has ever been drafted as late as Bart Starr and made the Packers' final roster. He had to claw his way from the bottom of the depth chart. At training camp, they tossed him a jersey with the number 42. That was a running back's number. The team made it clear they weren't expecting Starr to last. But what they couldn't see, what nobody saw, was that Starr had spent his entire life proving people wrong. So how did a 17th round pick go on to win 5 championships, host a 9-1 playoff record, and lead one of the greatest dynasties of all time? Bart Starr had always played for something more than a roster spot. Despite being a star in high school, his career would spiral in college following a hazing incident that injured his back. That forced him to miss most of his junior season, and then he was demoted to a backup as a senior. By the time he graduated, his confidence was shattered. The stats told the story. He threw 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions, and Alabama went 0-10 in his senior year. Inevitably, his draft stock would plummet, ultimately being selected by the Packers with the 200th pick. But that was only because a coach at Alabama knew somebody on the Packers staff and recommended Starr. Even though the Packers drafted him, his odds were bleak. Less than 8% of players drafted in the 17th round or later played a single down for the Packers, and no quarterback had ever made their final roster. Starr's father, a strict military man, had always doubted him. He favoured his younger brother, the quote, tougher one of the family, but when his younger brother tragically passed away at just 11 years old, everything changed. His father became even more distant, and the approval Starr always wanted seemed even further out of reach. So when Starr showed up to Green Bay as a nobody, buried at the bottom of the depth chart, this wasn't new. Beyond anything, he had a deep desire to prove himself. After a hard-fought training camp, Starr managed to secure a spot on the final roster. Finally, he thought, I made it. But his first 3 years looked bleak. 3-15-1 when he started, and he threw 13 touchdowns to 25 interceptions. It wasn't all on him. The Packers were one of the worst teams in the league. 1959 would be an inflection point of Starr's career. Vince Lombardi was hired as the new head coach. By the way, if you're new here, welcome. This is NFL Unveiled, and if you like old school football, you're in the right place, because that's all we talk about. Upon arriving and watching Bart Starr's tape, Lombardi was convinced he lacked the talent or the mental strength. And it made sense, his stats were really bad when he was in the game. That left Starr third on the depth chart. He probably would never have got any playing time, but following an injury to the starter and poor play by the backup, Lombardi, out of desperation, more than anything else, gave Starr a shot. He'd go on to win 4 straight, and the Packers finished with a winning record for the first time in over a decade. Although he played well and was slowly gaining confidence, he took a major blow when Lombardi benched him following the 1960 opener. But Starr was persistent. He won the job back a few weeks later, and led the Packers to their first championship appearance in 16 years. Yet doubt remained high. The Giants head coach, prior to the game, would say he thought the Packers were better than the Eagles, but were a little weak at quarterback. A little weak. Teammates disagreed. Paul Hornung would say, Bart Starr was the one guy you couldn't replace. While they ended up losing to the Eagles, Starr would only get better. It would be the last playoff game he ever lost. Lacking a rocket arm, athleticism, or any hype coming out of college, as well as the bad first 3 years of his career, Starr was seen as a cog in the Lombardi machine, the good old system quarterback trope. But he fulfilled the most important job of a quarterback, better than most. To win. No quarterback has ever performed so well, so consistently in pressure situations. 5 championships, including a three-peat. That's the second most championships of all time, but the pre-Super Bowl era doesn't exist, right? But he wasn't just riding on the coattails of a dynasty. He was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in NFL history. He retired with the highest completion percentage ever, and when he won MVP in 1966, he had a 105 passer rating. The league average was 64.9. In 2024, it was 92.3. Those numbers are absurd. This is a passer from 1966, playing in an era when defenses could maul receivers and quarterbacks, but still had a passer rating that would rank him 5th in the 2024 season. His Hall of Fame peers, Len Dawson, Johnny Unitas, Joe Namath, and Otto Graham, all threw more interceptions than touchdowns in the playoffs. But his playoff passer rating of 104.8 is still 3rd all time. Yet because of a Hall of Fame roster and the larger-than-life Vince Lombardi, Starr's impact is overlooked. The Packers' run-heavy offense limited Starr's passes. He never threw more than 300 in a season. Bobby Lane once quipped, Starr had the easiest job in football, just handing off the ball to Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor, which wasn't an uncommon belief. But as Taylor and Hornung began to decline, Bart Starr would emerge as the leader of the offense. How'd he do? MVP. But even during his MVP season, people were vocal about his abilities as a passer. Colts corner Bobby Boyd would say, Bart Starr is not a good passer. You seldom see the ball more than 12 yards. If they must throw, they have problems. He can't win. Well, he can win. the Packers beat the Colts 14-10 to clinch the Western Division Championship. Then entering the NFL Championship, Starr elevated his game again, 19 of 28, 304 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 143 passer rating, as the Packers beat the Cowboys 34-27. But Super Bowl I was even more important. The recent merger between the AFL and the NFL didn't erase the rivalry that had been building throughout the 60s. The NFL looked to assert their dominance against the wrongly believed inferior AFL, and the AFL were looking to upstart the established NFL, who kinda looked down on them. But it didn't matter who the opponent was, the Packers were dominant, and Bart Starr was a big reason for that. His 250 yards and 2 touchdowns earned him Super Bowl MVP in a comfortable 35-10 victory, so it's clear the criticism of Bart Starr missed the mark. Lombardi's one of the greatest coaches ever. You can't tell the story of Bart Starr without him, but to dismiss him as an average quarterback and give all the credit to Lombardi is wrong. Starr would become an extension of Lombardi on the field. He would later say the quarterback's job is to be the coach on the field. To do so, however, he needed to earn the respect of his teammates. After throwing an interception during practice, Lombardi scolded him in front of everybody. Starr remained quiet, even though the defender had tipped the ball, so it wasn't a clean interception. But after practice, he stormed into Lombardi's office and demanded the coach never do that again. He didn't have a problem with what Lombardi said or even how he said it, but he believed he'd lose the confidence of his teammates if Lombardi kept blasting him in front of everybody. So Lombardi understood and he stopped. But more importantly, it signaled to Lombardi that Starr was in fact assertive and could be a great leader. Much like any great quarterback-coach duo, they both need each other. Not anybody could work with Lombardi. Obsessive and detail-orientated, he needed a willing student. Bart Starr's high school coach would say, he absorbed coaching so well. He had the desire to do the job right. What he lacked in talent, he made up for with hard work, preparation, and a will to win with ruthless efficiency. During the week, it was Lombardi's team, but on Sunday, it was Starr's. Leadership also requires execution. Bart Starr called his own plays, and executed perfectly. None more impressive than in what Steve Sabol called the greatest game in NFL history, the Ice Bowl. Although Starr had been dealing with injuries throughout the 1967 season, he was clutch. Less than 5 minutes left, trailing 17-14, the Packers had to march 70 yards in the coldest game in NFL history, which they did, all the way to the 1-yard line. But then the Cowboys stopped them twice. It was 3rd and goal, 16 seconds left. Starr called their final timeout. He jogged to the sideline to talk with Lombardi. Everyone was expecting a pass. If they ran the ball and got stopped again, they wouldn't have enough time to run another play. But the running backs kept slipping, and the Cowboys just stopped the run twice. He told Lombardi he could run it himself, and Lombardi had full faith. Run it, and let's get the hell out of here. This play sent the Packers to Super Bowl II and their 3rd straight championship. They'd finish on top, and Lombardi retired shortly after the Packers beat the Raiders. That would mark the dark ages in Green Bay, as they failed to transition to the post-Lombardi era. And critics also point to that about Bart Starr. As soon as Lombardi left, he fell off. But the team was aging. Bart Starr would have some productive seasons, but injuries also caught up with him. It eventually got so bad, he couldn't even grip the ball with his throwing arm, so he retired in 1971. Despite the rough end to his career, Bart Starr's resume is undeniable. A 90% win percentage in the playoffs, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and one of the most efficient passers ever. Driving down the road, Bart Starr abruptly pulled the car over. He got out and approached the sanitation workers. He shook their hands and returned to his car. He told his son, it doesn't matter if it's the President of the United States or the gentleman picking up your trash, you treat them the same. Bart Starr was an all-time great football player, but he might have been an even better person. Let's forget about his coaching tenure though.